All right, and here we go. He's Rob Hunter. I'm Mike Russell. This is Russell and Hunter, and joining us is the man, Sheriff Lamb, Sheriff Mark Lamb, running for Senate. Mark Lamb for Senate, and I appreciate you being here. I want to just roll right into this. You are running for Senate. The primary is July 30th, so I want you guys to get out to get your vote in the mail as soon as you can, or be there on the day of, like I like to do it. Give us 30 seconds, minute, whatever you got. What's the campaign all about?
Look, the campaign is about preserving America, preserving freedom, less government, less of what we're getting right now, which is a bad economy, a bad border, crime on the rise. We've got to get this back under control, and I think experience matters right now. We've got to have people that are experiencing these issues. We need a proven conservative leader and fighter that knows what it's like to represent not just Republicans, but independents and Democrats alike. And I think that person is me. I think that the experience I've been able to glean it in 8 years as a sheriff and nearly 20 years as a law enforcement guy makes me the right candidate for this race, not just in the primary, but in the general election. And I want to help Arizonans preserve our state, preserve this country, preserve freedom. And I think we need a proven conservative fighter to do it.
Sheriff Mark Lamb, number one, thanks again for being here. But we heard you were offered a cabinet position in the Trump White House in 2025 on one condition: that you drop out of the race. But it was very interesting that the person offering you this job inappropriately was your opponent in this race. Is this true? Did Kari Lake offer you a Trump cabinet position?
You know, first of all, when you run a campaign, you have a lot of people helping. And this was an email that was not supposed to go out. And it went out. It had my name on it. So, you know, I got to own it. It's not that these weren't true things. It's just they weren't things that I was trying to make an issue of. But they made it out. So, you know, what do I have to do? I have to hit it head on. Yeah, look, these conversations have taken place. You know, these conversations of, you know, hey, would you like to be the marshal? Maybe you work in DHS. And we need you on the Trump campaign trail. But to do all these things, we got to have you drop out of the Senate race. It wasn't once. It was multiple times from different people. And so, look, that's not what I want to focus on. I've been committed to this race from day one. It wouldn't have mattered what anybody would have offered me or any suggestions they would have made or how much they begged me to get out of the race. I'm in it for a purpose, and I'm in it till the end. And I hope that it goes beyond July 30th. But right now we're focused on July 30th and that primary win. And so, yeah, well, those things happened. They're not things that I like to focus on.
Now, don't get me wrong, Sheriff Mark Lamb. Do not get me wrong. The idea of a Senator Mark Lamb fires me up more than you could imagine. But I'll tell you what keeps me sleeping well at night is the Director of Homeland Security, Mark Lamb. I would love nothing more than that. So when I heard that, I was like, you know, if it's Homeland Security, I don't know. He's the man for the job. He'd make our entire nation safe. But I need you to focus on what you're focused on here in the Senate because you are the right candidate for the Senate. And everybody who's joining in, Eddie, Grizz, Lynn, guys, it's great to see you guys here. Share this out during the program. Let's help him get the word out. And the more people we can share this to, the more people that can see this, the absolute better. What's the biggest snag you're finding because this is your first run for a Senate office, the office this big? What are the biggest snags you're finding?
You know, I don't know if it was a snag. That's a great question. I think the biggest point that I was disappointed in is how much money matters to these people in DC and throughout all of this campaign stuff, whether it's campaign managers, general consultants, NRSC, all these people, they care about money. You know, that's one of the first questions they ask you is how much money can you raise? And if you're not raising the money they would like, you know, especially I'm going up against a guy on the other side who's raising a crap ton of money, you know? And so immediately you can become white noise to them. And I think that's what happened. So it wasn't really a snag. I think it was a disappointing thing that I knew money was a big part of it. I thought that a good candidate could overcome, you know, the need to raise all that money. And we're going to prove that that's the case, by the way. We are going to prove that is true. But I will tell you that the snag is the money piece. Everybody's so focused on the money, whether it's on that political side, even in the media, they say, oh, he's not raising enough money. But here's the thing. I've won 2 elections. And guess what? On both of those days, nobody called me and asked me to bring my bank statement down to the recorder's office. What they did was they counted the votes, and that's who won the election. So I'm confident we'll have enough votes to win in July. And I think we're going to have plenty of votes to win in November as well.
You're running for a seat, Sheriff, where you're going to be one of 100. You have to work as a collaborative body. You're going to be part of a Republican structure that does things the Republican way. The Democrats do the opposite on the other side. How do you fit in to that dynamic of which most of us in America are incredibly frustrated with because that system doesn't really deliver good results? You see it as the sheriff of Pinal County with just the border drip through, the drugs that come through. So obviously a lot wrong. Obviously that's a really long question, but it gets back to this idea of where does Senator Mark Lamb fit in?
How do I fit in? I don't, because I'm not like them. I'm not a politician. For me, this is about America. This is about what the people of Arizona want. They're sending their representative back. And I think in Washington and across this country, we have lost touch with what your job is actually supposed to be. I know it as a sheriff, and I've stood up for things. I stood against COVID and mask mandates and vaccine mandates. And you guys have seen a lot of how we do our things in our agency. We stand up for what is right, no matter how hard it may be. And I think that's what Washington needs. So whether I may only be one of 100, but I think what they need are people that have God, family, freedom, and the Constitution as their guide as how they're going to vote on things. And frankly, I don't think we need more bills. I think if we're going to run bills, they should be bills that remove government organizations and remove taxes and remove government guidelines and restrictions. Not more laws, more government guidelines. I hope to bring some sanity back to it. And really, I share the same frustration that you guys do because I'm a common man. I'm frustrated with how government's going, and I'm hoping they let me in behind the enemy lines because we're going to get some stuff done.
Okay, and stuff done is right here in Arizona. We want stuff done, and a lot of that is at our southern border. Most of that is at our southern border, which you have an amazing amount of experience. You are the professional, and if you were in the Senate, you would be the pro in the room. You'd be the only man speaking from experience and authority there, but you're still speaking to about 50 Republican senators who have no idea what really was going on. You have another 50 Democrats who ignore what is going on and sometimes deny what is going on. Do you have that voice? Can you be the big voice, the big booming voice in the room that says we are in the middle of a national crisis here?
You know, a lot of times I get this question. I always ask people, how many people stood in front of the tanks in Tiananmen Square? You know, it was one guy. It changed the dynasty. So I think you cannot discount what one person can do. And what I can assure the people of Arizona is that I will stand up for Arizona and for America. And that includes the number one issue, which is securing our border and putting America and Americans first. I know that sounds like a campaign thing, but it's true. We've got to start putting America first because these policies are not putting America or Americans first. And when we talk about the border, you're right. You're one of I would be the most experienced senator in the Senate as it relates to the border. But I think that's what they need. You know, these guys only see things from a very superficial, out of touch level. They need somebody that's like, whoa, we can't do that because of this, this, and this. Or this will affect Border Patrol this way, this way, this way. Or it'll affect the amount of trade coming through Nogales every day, 1,000 trucks. It'll affect it that way. Or in Yuma, who produces 97 and ships 97% of all leafy greens from October to April. They need the labor down there in that area. So if you pass this bill, it's going to affect it this way, this way, this way. You need somebody in there that understands that when you tug on that string, what is it? What are the repercussions across the southern border for that? And I think that is why you need an experienced border guy who has been fighting it for 8 years, who has been fighting with the federal government on many levels, but working with the federal government as well on many levels. I think you need that now more than ever. And I think you're going to see far more senators come that way towards the experience as opposed to me having to go towards them. I'm not going to do it.
Nice.
Sheriff Lamb is with us. And full disclosure, my vote is in the mail. I put the nice little circle right next to your name.
Darn
but
right.
Part of this reason is why, right? Your explanation of the border. You understand the complexities of it. I want to tie in the Fourth Amendment because you and I have talked about this. Your LT, Lieutenant Lepre, and I have talked about this. Jim Hurd, you're one of your attorneys, right? Works with your department. I've asked you guys all because I'm kind of a Fourth Amendment nut. Ask Mike. Mike has heard me talk about the Fourth Amendment for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yes.
You respect, Sheriff, the reasons for the Fourth Amendment. And there's a line of which the Supreme Court has allowed police agencies to cross. No-knock warrants is one example, using all this power. But your agency doesn't do it the same way because LT has, Mr. Hurd has a respect for the Fourth Amendment. So how do you combine what you just said about the border with a love of the Fourth Amendment in a city, DC, that tries to shred the Fourth Amendment all the time?
Look, the Constitution is pretty simple and straightforward as to how government is supposed to behave and act as it relates to the consent of the governed. And the Fourth Amendment is one of the most important ones to me because that is government overreach at its finest, where they are coming into your domain or something that you own without a warrant or without permission or without probable cause is what the requirement is for them to be able to come into your home. It is unacceptable. And we believe that at the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. When our guys graduate from the academy, we give them a copy of the Constitution. And we tell them, your number one job is to protect the Constitution and the people's constitutional rights. If you have to hold people accountable in that process, then that's part of the job. But your primary role is to preserve the peace and protect the people's constitutional rights, and the Fourth Amendment being the greatest example of that. The reason why you need a guy like me back in DC is because more of the egregious violations of the Fourth Amendment are happening at a federal level. They are actually, the FBI admitted, or they had a report done where it said they had nearly 300,000 violations of FISA. And FISA was only supposed to be used for external threats to America, and they have now turned it and maneuvered it to use it on American citizens. And I think that is a violation of the Fourth Amendment at its highest degree. And I think you need people like me who are Constitution hawks, who are going to go back and defend the Constitution. That includes a significant piece of it, which is the Fourth Amendment. And I think the federal government has probably violated that more than any other law enforcement. And it's not the guys on the ground. Look, the guys on the ground are good. I think they've lost. The rot has started from the top, and that rot is permeating down, and we have to cut it out before it ruins the whole entire piece of it. So,
well, Sheriff Lamb, you're getting a lot of, I don't know if you can see the comments. You're getting several comments on here. Just a lot of, he has my vote. Thank goodness, a man of the people, for the people. And they're right on. A lot of support here. I saw a clip of some interview you did where you were talking about, you might've been, it was edited. So it was very short. And if you can help me to recreate what you said there, because I believe it was maybe a Zoom call or some sort of call with maybe it was Mayorkas, or maybe it was someone in the administration, that they were saying that here's our biggest threat to America. And then your response to that just gave me the chills. I was very excited about having you share that, kind of set that stage for us, and then tell us what was said and what you said.
Yeah, this was back, I think, in 2022. So not long after this administration had taken over. And we were at the Greenbrier in West Virginia for the Major County Sheriff's Association. And we had an intel meeting where there was a small group of us sheriffs that are part of that intel, group. And they had different federal agents there. There was an FBI guy, and I got into him after that because I was all worked up after this. But they were a chief from the DHS, Department of Homeland Security. So one of Mayorkas's guys comes on, and he's on a Zoom, and he starts off and he's like, we're the highest threat to America right now is domestic violence, domestic extremism. And I'm thinking, whoa, he's got my attention. What the heck is he going to talk about? And he says, immediately starts rolling. Now, these are going to be, parents at school board meetings. These are going to be people that don't think the election was legit. These are going to be people that think that January 6th was okay. And he starts going, and veterans, and he's going down this list. And I mean, my blood is boiling at this point. And as soon as he finishes, I couldn't hit that button fast enough. And as soon as he finished, I hit that button and I said, how dare you? How dare you come into this meeting and say that the primary threat to America is domestic violence extremism? Americans, you basically not only described me, but you described every American who thinks contrary to this administration. That's who you've deemed as the enemy of this country. I said, you didn't mention BLM or Antifa, who have literally wreaked havoc on cities across this country over the last couple of years. You didn't mention the cartels, the human trafficking. You didn't mention the fentanyl poisoning, which is the leading cause of death in America because amongst Americans between the ages of 18 and 45. No, you think Americans are the greatest threat. I said, I'm telling you right now, from a local view, I don't have any of those problems that you just illustrated. However, contrary, I do have problems with the other things that I listed. So do you have any intel whatsoever? Or are you going to acknowledge the threat that those other groups pose to this country? Or are you just going to continue to imply that Americans are the greatest threat? I said, honestly, that is unacceptable. And it is disgusting. And he says, well, you know, Sheriff, we try to apply the law equally. And I said, well, your actions say otherwise. You know, and a couple other sheriffs kind of jumped in and tried to cool it down a little bit. And I was like, dude, don't cool this down. That was unacceptable what he just said. And so I'm sure I've been on a list for a long time, this government. But honestly, we deal with things, we deal with crime that affects communities every day. And none of those things that they mentioned were things that we are dealing with. And yet they were completely ignoring real threats to this country. And over the last 3.5 years, it has become even more apparent with how they've just turned a blind eye to the border and the national security threat that is presented with not just people coming into this country illegally and potential national security threats, but also the greatest cause of death in America right now, fentanyl poisonings coming from China, put into the hands of the cartels, and then being placed in the hands of Americans. I was appalled. So yeah, I fought on behalf of the people in my community and in Arizona and America by telling them they were wrong for the approach they had.
So talk about, Sheriff, a little bit more about those impacts that you see in Pinal County with the border. Mike and I have been out with you guys a couple of different times, border specific. Not only is there a bunch of trash left behind in the desert, there's staging areas. There's also teenagers that get lured down from the valley to go pick some of these migrants up and drop them off in Phoenix. That's causing some challenges for you guys down there. So aside from the teenagers, what other crime activity, what other impacts that we need to know about are happening in your community?
You know, I want to kind of play off the teenagers thing a little bit because I think most Americans think, oh, this is cartel action. You know, they're trafficking humans. And I don't think they have any idea to the extent that the cartels are trafficking humans and drugs into this country. But what they are doing is these are transnational criminal organizations. They don't just exist on the southern border of Arizona or Texas or just in Mexico. They're in 54 different countries. They're having an impact, and they are really making a lot of money off of America. And we are actually, that is giving them the power and the money to be able to go all over the country, all over the world, 54 different countries. But what I wanted to hit on was they're engaging youth in their criminal activity. And to show the point, to illustrate this, Cochise County over the last 3.5 years have arrested about 3,400 people for border-related crimes. Would you guys care to guess how many of those people were illegal out of those 3,400 people arrested?
33.
I was going to go 33 and change.
198 of those 3,400 were illegals.
Okay.
That means, my point being that what we have allowed is the cartels to engage American citizens in criminal behavior down to as young as 12 years old. And what we are doing is the cartels are playing on our broken borders. They are playing on Americans needing money and our bad economy. They are playing on all of this, and they are engaging American citizens in transnational criminal organizations, allowing the cartels to take a hands-off approach and make even more money and put Americans at risk for breaking the law and put Americans at risk. You talk about what effects that has in our county. We're not on the border. We are 71 miles off the border where the I-10 comes into the county. We're 52 miles off the border in the desert where the Tohono O'odham Indian Reservation is. So we get people coming through the deserts with drugs, with people. We get them leaving people for dead in the deserts. We have to go help Border Patrol rescue. We get people being trafficked in trunks of cars and back seats of cars. We get drugs being trafficked. So we see the impact of these people coming in, but everybody we pull over, almost every single one of them is an American. And the only people that seem to be getting charged are Americans. And the illegals are being allowed to be let into this country. They broke the law. They precipitated the bad behavior on behalf of the Americans. And now we are, as Americans, we're the ones that are, those are the people to be in charge. So I think most Americans don't realize just how much the cartels have engaged American citizens in their criminal behavior.
So Sheriff Mark Lamb is with us, and please share this out if you're watching and commenting on it. Please share this out and help us get the word out and in this message, especially this one, because when you do become Senator Mark Lamb, I would love to see the line that is at your office door, and of anyone that wants to sign on to a border security bill, they're going to go to you first. What is your plan of action? What if it is your bill, your piece of legislation, or something you signed on to? What do you want in yours, and what has to be the key components of something you would sign on to in a border security bill?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And what the government is doing is they're playing off of the uninformed in this country. So first of all, you have two major problems that you've got to deal with. While these problems intertwine oftentimes, you have two significantly different problems. You have border security, which requires Border Patrol and CBP to secure our borders and protect us from, people coming in this country, protect us from an invasion, which is what the Constitution says. And then you have the immigration piece. The border security piece is something that Donald Trump, should he take office again, or should we get control of the Senate, this is a piece that we can push immediately. These are done you can do by executive orders. While I do not love executive orders or mandates, you can start executing executive orders immediately, which is why Donald Trump had so much success dealing with border issues before. Then you have the long-term piece, which needs to be fixed, which is what really drives the open border problems, is the immigration. Because our immigration that actually has to be passed through law, through Congress and Senate, that, because it's broken, and they only let 65,000 people in a year, and then there's a huge waiting list, and our courts are backed up 3 to 5 million cases now. What that does is it encourages people to say, look, there's no chance of me getting through the legal way, so I'm just going to come through the illegal way. And so we've got to fix both of those. You've got to fix the immigration piece, which allows for UMA to have their workers. It allows for trade to come back and forth. But it also makes sure that anybody coming in this country is vetted and a benefit to this country. We can't continue to take the third world of the third world and expect that we won't, in turn, become third world at the same time. And then the border security piece has to be day one. We've got to get on board, and that has to start fixing. Finish the wall, turn Border Patrol loose, take the handcuffs off, let them do their job, enforce Title 8, which says that you can't come into this country illegally, and you've got to do the Remain in Mexico, where people cannot claim asylum, which many of these, 90% of these, by the way, will be overturned when they actually go to court. But right now they're getting court dates for 2030, 2032. Are you kidding me? So, I mean, we've got so many problems, but you've got to fix both pieces of those. One is quicker than the other, but the other has to be fixed once and for all, because Congress and Senate has continued to fail us decade after decade on this.
How do you, Sheriff, work with the other side? So what if it's close margin in the Senate, it's a close margin in the House, there's not many votes to spare? How do you convince some Democrats to say yes? Because 3 to 5 million court load backup, that's only going to get worse, because either way, however many people that have come in the last 3 years, 4 years, 12 million people, something has to be done with that. And in order to have something done, the fights in Washington prevent anything from happening. So what is Mark Lamb's strategy to go across that aisle and say, okay, Mark Kelly, you're my fellow senator in Arizona. Help me with your team.
This is why you need a guy like me, because I can actually tell them what the impact is on America and on our communities. Most of senators and congressmen, if they've come to the border, it's been for a quick little photo op, see a few things, and then they go back. Many senators, especially on the left side, I've been extending an offer for the last 8 years I've been the sheriff. I have had 0 Democrats come and take advantage of that. And my offer is not a political offer. My offer is I would love to show you what we see and what we deal with so that you can in turn help me at the national level. I think what you need is somebody in there that can explain to these Democrats, because a lot of them are only seeing what they see on MSNBC or CNN, and they're getting a certain type of information that they think we are embellishing. What they need to actually know and see is the ruthlessness of the cartels, of chopping people into pieces and decapitating people and killing people that don't pay them their dues when they come across, or leaving women and children for dead in the desert, or men extorting men, raping women, raping children, putting them in the sex trade here. I think they have to actually see that these are real things, and they need somebody that will sit down with them and walk them through some of those and bring people to the table that can corroborate the information that we're giving. Because I believe that Democrats, if they knew the severity of the humanity problem that we're dealing with because of the cartels, that I think many of them would actually say, yeah, we gotta fix this piece of it. But I think most of them lack information, and they really lack somebody in the Senate as a peer that can come to them and say, look, let me explain to you why we do all this, and these are the issues. Perfect example. I had a congresswoman, and she asked me, this was like a year or two ago. She says, well, Sheriff, what about all the good people coming in? I said, you're right. I said, look, let me put an example to you. Let's say I had 10 good people, 10 people, 5 good, 5 bad, but I couldn't tell you which ones are bad. Would you let them into your house? She's quiet. And I said, you're quiet because the answer is no, you would never let them in your house. I said, let me take it a step further. And maybe this is more in line with the percentages. Let's say that 9 people are good and 1 is bad and he's a sex offender, but I can't tell you which one he is. Will you let me put him in your house? And once again, she was quiet. And I said, the answer is no. And I said, my job as a sheriff, if I have to stop 9 good people to stop 1 bad person, that's what I'm expected to do from my community. And you know why I'm okay with that? Because we have a legal process in place in this country that allows good people to come in if they so choose. And we are asking that they follow that legal process for coming into this country. So we've got to educate, I think, even the people that we think know the problems, they don't. The majority of these people are voting on bills that they really have no idea about, especially as it relates to the border. That border bill they tried to run was not a good bill. But they said just because they got a couple Republicans and a couple Democrats both to come together, that was a good bill. No, they were going to run it right through shove that right down the throats of the American people. And I'm glad it failed. It needed to fail. It wasn't a good bill. So, yeah, we need experienced people that understand the issue to the core.
Sheriff, help us out if you can, because Rob and I I think we've tried to put ourselves in the shoes of migrants, and we do understand that there are good human beings that are coming here. And I've said several times, if I was in any of these countries and I had the means to make this happen, I'd make it happen right now. I'm not knocking them, especially the good ones. I'm not knocking them at all. But we've also talked about trying to put ourselves in the shoes of these migrants. What is life like when they get here? Because it just seems to be, we always see the trains of people coming across the border and going through the wall and all that stuff. And like, oh man, that's crazy. Well, what happens next? I was assuming that the cartel still owns them essentially when they get here. How far off is that?
You're not far off at all. I was actually having an interview with a media guy down in Tucson, maybe a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. And I was talking about the Remain in Mexico program. He said, well, Sheriff, if you do the Remain in Mexico program, then the cartels will have control over them. And I just started chuckling, and I said, do you honestly believe that the cartels' influence on those people ends the day they cross the border? No, it has likely just begun. They may have been dealing with the cartels for a week or two while they were in Mexico trying to traverse the border and paying them, or establishing some credit with even worse, doing credit with the cartels. But the cartels are not done with you the day you cross the border. As a matter of fact, they know that there is a huge market for children trafficking in this country, sex with children. They know that there's a huge human trafficking piece with women. They extort the men. I mean, it does not stop the day they come across. And so when you ask about the impact, nobody knows this better than the guys who are actually doing the job. Border Patrol, sheriffs, the guys that are in the deserts or on the highways. You think about that guy, and I'm like you, Russell. I'm like, look, if I paid all my life savings to come across this country, right? You come across, oh, how was that fireworks?
That was fantastic.
That was awesome.
That's a way to prove a point.
Yeah.
There you go, Sheriff.
That was awesome. So let's say, Russell, you pay $6,000, your life savings to come across to the cartels. And then you traverse, and you're 2 weeks, you're coming up through the, Central America, you get to Mexico, you got the cartel you're dealing with. And then finally you go through the middle of the night, you hike 20, 30 miles in the desert. It's cold at night or blazing hot. And then you get into a car that you think you're finally free, and you're an hour from Phoenix, and the Pinal County Sheriff's Office stops you. You can't even imagine the devastation on the faces of those people to know after all that, they got caught. So close, so close. And we see that. We see the human side of it. And the only people that win in a broken and unsecured border and a broken immigration system are the cartels. That's it. They win financially, and frankly, government continues to win because they continue to use this as a fundraising ploy every 2 years when they run for office. And so the reality is Americans are victims, and so are the people that are trying to come here to this country are victims. And we see that piece of it. And frankly, it's tough sometimes because you can see that some of them are so happy to see us, but they're sad at the same time because they've been under the control of the cartels for the last few weeks or months. So yeah, we see all aspects of it. And it's tough sometimes because you see the dreams of people just crushed like powder in their hands.
Yeah, I mean, you spent your life savings, months on the journey. I talked to a guy from Cuba in December. It was a 5-month journey for him, he said. And there were car chases in South America, crossing the Darien Gap, which is, I think, between Panama and whatever country. It's really difficult. So to get here after doing all of that, to be, well, you didn't quite make it. It's kind of wild. So you talked about, Sheriff, the impact on us, the impact on those people that get arrested. But what about the impact on your department, Pinal County Sheriff's Office? Because like everybody else, you have limited resources. So I don't know if you know this offhand, the percentage of resources that you have to devote to migration, illegal immigration, and what does that take away from? What other things could your department do if the federal government got the border under control?
Yeah, so I have an anti-smuggling unit. Anti-smuggling is 4 guys and a sergeant. They're dedicated completely to stopping trafficking into this country. I have 4 canines on the roadside, 2 in the jail, 4 on the road. Those canines are completely dedicated to stopping the flow of humans and drugs into the country and money and guns going back to Mexico. I also have an aviation unit, my search and rescue units. Those people are predominantly dedicated to stopping people that are coming through, working with Border Patrol. So yeah, we expend a lot of resources and a lot of resources that we could use for other things. For example, drugs are I'm not trying to raise the white flag here, but I'm a realist. Drugs are going to come in. They're going to find a way to get drugs in, but they come in through trains, they come in through the mail, they come in through all these things. And that anti-smuggling unit that I have, that's their primary job, is to stop that. But they're so busy stopping human loads and drug loads on the highways alone that we can't even focus on all those other things. We've got our narc units that are completely overwhelmed because of all the drugs that are flowing into communities. We've got our homicide detectives who now have to work a case because we have a fentanyl poisoning in our community. And now you got to work that case to see if there's some correlation that you can charge the person that sold that fentanyl pill to those people. So yeah, it's a tremendous strain on our resources. We had a 377% increase in traffic stops involving human smuggling and a 461% increase in pursuits involving human smuggling. This was 21 to 23. And we had a 600% increase in fentanyl seizures in our community.
I'm sorry, say that again, 600%?
600% increase. Yep. I mean, and Arizona is the jumping off point. If you don't think that what we're doing is important, even in Pinal County, 1 county off the border, DEA seized 78 million fentanyl pills last year. 48 million of them were here in Arizona.
Dang.
And there's less DEA agents than there are in New York. And yet we seize well over half of all fentanyl. The Border Patrol, CBP, seized 110 million fentanyl pills last year. We just knocked down a load a couple weeks ago. It was 80 pounds of fentanyl, ended up being about 400,000 fentanyl pills and 9 pounds of cocaine. So, yeah,
that was a gift with purchase. Apparently, that was yeah.
Right.
The 80 pounds of fentanyl. Hey, we got a few packs of blow back here. We're gonna throw you. Holy
If
mackerel.
you buy this bag of fentanyl pills, we'll throw in a little coke. It's Scarface, you know.
And then there's 9 pounds back there. Just
I always say we feel like Miami Vice when we bust the cocaine.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yes, you do one of those little things. Yeah. I watched Miami Vice. I grew up on Miami Vice.
I hate to break it to you, but we've progressed beyond the.
Damn it! See, that's well.
Taking all the fun out of the job. No.
I'm old school. So Sheriff Mark Lamb with us, and let's talk about this. Actually, came as a question from one of the commenters as well. We're being told, and I know when we're being told by anything by this administration, we're essentially being lied to. That the bad guys, the criminals, that element is being shipped back. Let's say that were true, and they actually are shipping back some of the bad guys. What is that process? Do they just go get back in line and come back up here? Because I don't think they would just take it as a loss and say, okay, yeah, all right, gonna go back whence I came. They're coming back, right?
Yeah. First of all, anybody who believes that they are shipping all the bad guys back to their country, I've got some oceanfront property for you out here in Arizona. I'd love to sell you because you're being sold a bill of goods. They are only able to vet about 5%. Think of the sheer numbers of the people coming in. And you can do the math in your head that they don't have the time to vet a lot of these people. Some of them are being caught. And Mike, you bring up a good point. Like they're going, we bust them, they get charged, then they're sent back. Give you an example. There were 7 2 weeks ago. Border Patrol caught 7 guys that were sex offenders, convicted here in America, that had been sent back. And now they were trying to get back into the country. Some of them were convicted for rape. Some were convicted for misconduct, sexual misconduct, and some of them were convicted for sexual misconduct with minors that we were now allowing to come back in here. On the average, I think they catch about 40,000 people a year, but just do the numbers. You cannot believe that they are catching everybody. 40,000 out of 2-point-something million. You're going to tell me that's all the bad guys there were? They caught 40,000 people that had either been convicted of crimes here in America or that were wanted by law enforcement here in America. I think it's somewhere around in that number. But it's a tremendous number. But the fact is, you're not catching every bad guy. There's no way. We don't catch every bad guy in our community. Right. That's a lie for them to tell you that they catch every bad guy trying to come into this country. And the crime that we've seen proves that. The Laken Riley, the Rachel Morin, the Jocelyn Ngare, those are all cases that absolutely disprove that lie when they tell you they catch all the criminals coming into this country. It's just not true.
And real quick, before Rob, just to clarify, you said the Department of Homeland Security is only vetting 5% of the migrants that are coming through I mean, I can do that math pretty easily here. That's nothing. So 5% is all that's getting vetted?
So that number fluctuates because it depends on how many people they're coming in, they're apprehending. Okay. You know, at the time when I was talking to Border Patrol, we were getting about 12 to 15,000 people coming in. Now that number's dropped down to about 5,000 or 6,000, large in part because of the summer. Joe Biden wants to take credit for it, but the reality is we always drop in numbers in the summer. And they planned that, by the way, very well to come out with these, we're going to fix the border. And look at the numbers have dropped. They knew the summer was coming. But when it was about 12 to 15,000 in the Tucson sector, they were saying, look, Sheriff, we're only able to vet about 5% of these people. Think about how labor intensive the vetting process is from some guy that's maybe lives on the streets in Ecuador, how hard it's going to be to vet that person, not just here in America, but in their other country. And most of them dump their IDs. So then they come and go, hey, my name's Rob Hunter. My name's Mike Rob. That's what they say. Like they can pick any name they want at that point because they can completely start a new identity when they come in here. They can pick a date of birth, they can pick a name, and they dump their IDs, and then they come across.
So, Sheriff, you're highlighting just one of the many frustrations again, that we all seem to have: progressive, Democrat, Republican, Trumper, not Trumper. The system just doesn't work. That's just one example. So in the Senate, you won't just deal with border. Just like as sheriff, you don't just deal with border crime. What are some of the other issues, Sheriff Mark Lamb, that are on your radar that need to be addressed with the quickness in America?
Well, first of all, the economy. I mean, Americans are just beat right now. I mean, some of us have finally gotten to the point where you might make $100,000, and now that's the equivalent of $30,000, $40,000. We can't seem to get ahead. Look, our inflation rate is astronomical right now. It's at a cumulative interest or inflation rate of 20% over the last 3.5 years. So it was like 3.4% in 2021. It went to 8%. Then it went down to 3.1, and now it's at 4 point something. When you add it all together, we're sitting right about 20%. Not to mention the cost of all the goods that we're consuming in this country have gone up 25% at minimum. That's the average of the cost increase. Power has gone up almost 30%. Auto loan delinquencies are at an all-time high. Inflation rates are at a interest rates are at a 23-year high. Most of us could not afford to buy our own homes again if we had to buy our own home, let alone a young person who's now coming out of college or high school and wants to get ahead in life. The ability of them to be able to buy houses is really diminished. And then if I was doing an interview with, I won't say his name, but I was doing an interview with one of these newscasters here in the Valley, and we were talking about the economy, and he says, look, I think it's great. Look at all the jobs that they're bringing. But first of all, they're taking credit for jobs that were going away, that went away under COVID, and they're kind of coming back. But the other thing that they continue to, most of those jobs are in government. They're in the government sector. Right. So this is like socialism at its best. Only 6%. Only 6,000 of the 254,000 jobs in December were in the manufacturing industry, which means we're becoming a country of consumers and not producers. But I told him, I said, you know how I know the economy's not working? This fact alone. We've gone from 700 American credit card debt in 1 year. 1 year went from $765 billion to $1.1 trillion. That is a 40% increase in credit card debt in 1 year for Americans. Tell me that's not going to rear its ugly head very soon if this economy continues the way it's going. Now, you might say, well, Sheriff, you tell us the problem. Well, how do you fix it? You have to have your energy independence back. I'm sorry. That is the number one issue. You know why? Because it takes energy to make a product, ship a product, sell a product. And if the cost of energy goes up because it's harder to find, and we're buying oil from Venezuela and Russia and whoever else, ultimately that is going to drive the cost of everything up, and that drives the cost of goods up 25%. And whatever they can't pass on to us as the consumer, because it's impossible for a restaurant to increase their, charging you for $5 for a hot dog, tomorrow it's $10. They don't have that ability because we won't buy it. So the rest of it is passed on to us in the way of inflation. Mm-hmm. And so between inflation and, bad energy policies in this country, and if you don't think I'm wrong, if you want to know just a number about energy policies, the EPA, which, by the way, I'm thankful that the Supreme Court overturned the Chevron decision, because this is going to have a good impact on things like this. But the EPA in the last 3.5 years have passed 25,000 pages of new guidelines on American businesses and on our industries in this country. That is 38 times the text of the Bible, by the way. And it's having a cost increase on our economy of $54 billion.
Yes.
For what? For what? I mean, I can't even. And then I got these people that say, well, the environment, Sheriff. Okay. So you're going to tell me you can't close the southern border, but you think you can tell Mother Nature how to behave? Good
yes,
luck.
if you just tax us some more, yeah.
Yeah.
But it will speak to that, because as the environmentalist in the group, the conservationist in the group here, I've been down the southern border with Rob. Yeah, I have seen. It is absolutely disgusting what is happening to our groundwater and everything, with all of this stuff seeping into it, these pills that are left behind, the junk, the garbage, the habitat is being destroyed. You want to talk EPA? Let's knock on their door a second here. Go shut the border down. You'll do more for our environment in our world than you do with your 30 bazillion pages of new regulations.
Right. That shows you that it doesn't matter to them. It's about money and it's about politics to them. Because if they truly cared about the environment, you're exactly right, Mike. You would be on the border cleaning it up because it's a disaster down there. There's trash everywhere. It gets into our washes. It gets into our water source. I mean, it is not good what's going on down there. And here's the thing. All of us, I'm an outdoorsman. I'm a hunter. I want clean water. I want beautiful air. I want that. But I'm not going to do it at the cost of my economy. We can't do that. That's suicide. That's financial suicide. And 80% under Obama, 80% of the Green New Deal dollars, I know the Green New Deal wasn't under him, but 80% of those dollars from environmental things, and I have to believe it's probably as high, if not higher, were going to supporters of Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Companies that supported him in his campaign, Democrats or supported other Democrat candidates, are the ones that got the lion's share of those funds. Don't tell me it's about the environment. It's about money for them. And while we all care about the environment, and I think all of us are equally concerned about making sure that we have good water, good air, and a sustainable environment, we also need to make sure that we have a sustainable economy. And we also need to make sure that our government's not putting dollars, our hard-earned dollars, into the pockets of their buddies for supporting them for stupid ideas that will never work.
Well, and it's also, Sheriff, it's a big ruse because let's say that happens, that America decides, you know what, we're going to shut down all of our electricity unless it's produced by solar and wind and nuclear. Great. China's still emitting like they're going out of style. They're responsible right now for 1/3 of all carbon emissions in the world, and they have no intention of slowing down. So a lot of this, number one, you're right. We had our congressman friend, Congressman Schweikert, once described Washington as a laundering machine. It's a washing machine, right? Takes our money we work hard for, give it out to your political donor friends. But I think that's the crux of this, of why I would even ask you, Sheriff, are you sure you want to get further in the belly of the beast of this? Because this is not a system that works for us anymore, the average American person.
Look, I'd be lying to you to say that I did. This was not on my list of things that I wanted. It was not. But somebody had to do it. It's not in my nature to stand there and wait, for the building to burn to the ground. Or is it in my nature to stand there and wait for Mike or Rob to run into the building? What kind of man am I if I just do that? Especially knowing that I had the experience in these issues of crime, the border, economy. I run a large agency, a large budget, a government budget, variable costs. I balance that budget and I stay within that budget, large in part because we have great employees too. But I have to do that every year. We need that type of experience. And what kind of man am I if I say, I'm not going to do it because it's uncomfortable. I don't want to go to DC. That should tell you what kind of patriot I am. I don't like DC, but I'm willing to go back there if it means that we're going to save America and save freedom and save Arizona, then I'm willing to do it. So the answer to that is patriotism.
Yes.
Yeah, it's out of patriotism that I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm. Rob wants to know if you're going to wear the cowboy hat in Senate confirmation hearings.
You know it.
That's
I have to. I probably got it. I don't know if I can wear it in the. People are gonna be like, "Whoa, he's bald."
Yeah, we know that, and you know how I know that. And this sounds something so small as to what we were like compared to what we've been talking about. But every time I have been with the sheriff, and if he shakes a woman's hand, that hat comes right off, and it shakes. And you were just, man, you're just the man for the job. I say that.
I'm not wearing my hat. I'll reach for my hat and to take it off when I go to say hello to a woman. But yeah.
Like, did he just salute me? That got weird. That got really awkward. Sir, let's pivot if we could, Sheriff, that because obviously this weekend's events, the assassination attempt on President Trump, a lot is being looked at right now in law enforcement in their work with Secret Service. Now, you are a several years veteran of Country Thunder, by God. You have to deal with those drunk slappies out there and all that kind of management control. This should have been a cakewalk to you, securing a president in this small environment. What in the heck did you see there that you thought it was just a forehead slap? Like, why wasn't that done? What was missed in your eyes as someone who's probably, you've dealt with Trump rallies down here in your jurisdiction as well, haven't you?
That's what I was just going to talk
Yeah,
about.
right.
And look, first of all, let me preface what I'm going to say, because I hate armchair quarterbacks, because it's so easy to look back and say, oh, we did this and this wrong. But part of being a good leader is assessing what you did right and did wrong. And I think that, first of all, I thought that lady should have been fired before the sun rose on Monday morning. She should have absolutely been fired. But this goes to show you this administration rewards incompetence. They continue to leave incompetent people that have failed the American people. They love bureaucrats and technocrats that are horrible at their job, because they do exactly what this administration wants them to do. Now, getting back to the topic, we did a Trump rally in Florence at Country Thunder. And one of the things we did is, first of all, I think most people don't realize, Secret Service sends a very lean group down there. And we thought they'd come with 50, 100 agents. They come out, they're like, well, we got like 4 or 5 of us. And that was a shocker at first, and then their tactical units, the snipers, those are only a small group of them as well. So we have to supplement a lot of that. We had to actually provide a lot of our SWAT guys, which are very squared away guys. We actually had guys in suits that were also helping like the detail of it. And then we had uniform guys all over the place as well. But when we went to Country Thunder, you guys have been out there. Anybody who's listening to me right now knows that there's all sorts of high points at Country Thunder. We had all those covered. The first thought I had is, how in the world was that roof not covered?
Right.
How? That roof was 130 yards from the stage. How in the world was that roof not covered? That's the most glaring thing. And then the other thing is, this is what I did a speech the other day. And when you talk about why I think I'm a right candidate, experience matters. Not in DC, but experience matters. And you could clearly see that the agents that were there, it was not their normal deal. I guarantee you, and it's starting to come out, this was not their normal detail. You could clearly see that this was, they were not as experienced and trained as maybe some of the other ones are. And that's why I always say, look, send the right people. Anytime you have a mission that is critical, we don't just send any old patrol guy, even though they're very trained. We send our SWAT guys. We send guys that are extremely trained, that are good at what they do. They've been vetted and processed and all that. And I think that whether this decision was made at a high level at the Marshals at the Secret Service level, I think that's where a lot of it was screwed up. But also, I think that there's going to be a lot of going back and realizing, hey, we left a lot of open gaps. And a lot of it comes down to complacency, guys. In the police world, we do things so much and think about it, there hasn't been an assassination attempt like that since Reagan. So now you've been, for 40, 50 years, you've been going through the motions. And this is a reminder that we have to always be on a high alert. Complacency, like we say, complacency kills in this. And we're just, by the grace of God alone, how that bullet managed to only hit his ear is sheerly a miracle in and of itself. And let's hope that we fix it. But I don't think the blame game, other than getting rid of the lady at the top, because that's who you have to get rid of, I think we just learn from here and thank our lucky stars that this wasn't worse.
We live in a different time, though, Sheriff, because information travels a lot differently. And we're having a reasonable, rational, fact-based conversation here with you, which is one of the reasons we love you. So for Grizz and Stephanie and Rhonda and Lynn that are joining us and chatting along, this is an opportunity for you guys to share this out too, because conversations like this get neutered by the algorithms unless we all partake in it. So that's why Mike and I always ask you to do this. And I bring this up, Sheriff, because we're already in conspiracy theory territory on both sides. The left, at least people like MSNBC's Joy Reid, are saying, where's the proof of the bullet? He didn't get shot. And then some on the right are saying that this 20-year-old is the new Lee Harvey Oswald and he's a patsy. So how do you combat that, trying to be logical, because the information changes and travels so quickly? But this case is so interesting because you see, number one, the kid's standing around. He was identified an hour before as a threat. Nothing was done. He went on the roof before he had his rifle, took out the rangefinder, goes down off the roof, comes back, gets back on the roof. with a rifle bag. Still nothing is done. And then you find out that he had a second cell phone at his house that only had 27 contacts. The FBI said that yesterday. So there's all these weird pieces of information. And if we don't have actual knowledge of where it goes, our own brains will fill it in. So how do you combat that when sometimes you have to be methodical, slow, and patient when social media is not and the narrative that comes out on either side is not?
Well, I think one of the ways you combat that, and this is a tougher case, but we do it on a local level, is you got to release information. If you don't release information, everybody's going to run with it. What you have to be is, the Secret Service person standing in front saying, this is who he was. This is what we had at his house. This is what the motives we have so far. We'll keep you posted. There needs to be very periodic, because if not, the information's going out whether you like it or not. And then what happens is it becomes, we don't know what the hell is going on. I will tell you some information that is true and it is verifiable on a ton of videos. We cannot allow the left to continue to have this hateful narrative. I mean, granted, hate is really bubbled up on both sides, and it's got to be quelled down, because when you have the president saying, hey, we need to put a bullseye on this guy, I know people know that he's not meaning that literally, I think, but at the same time, there are people out there that don't know that. They don't have the faculties in their head to say, hey, he wasn't being literal with me. This has been brewing for a while. I don't think anybody was really surprised that that somebody went to this extent. And so I would hope that as Americans, we pull that back, but we also got to start holding people accountable. Remember when we were kids, nobody ever said anything bad about the president, or you could say bad, but nobody ever made any threats against the president because you were sure that the Secret Service would show up and arrest you for it. Mm-hmm. They've gotten, to where they've allowed a lot of things to be said, which I think are inappropriate. I'm a big proponent of the First Amendment, but, there are laws in place for a reason. So there are a lot of hate that needs to we got to stop that.
Yeah, I would too.
We've got to, every law enforcement agency is going to be on high alert now. I'm sure there's going to be a few more rallies here in Arizona along the way. We were at a law enforcement summit yesterday and the day before up in Flagstaff, talking about just this very issue about when they're coming into our communities, pulling each other, pulling resources from other agencies to be able to make sure that we can provide security, whether it's for Biden, whether it's for Trump or anybody else that would have that type of security, that we can make sure that this doesn't happen on our watch.
Yeah, I have a two-part question for you. One is the communication when an event like this does happen, the communication between you, law enforcement, and the Secret Service, because it comes out now the Secret Service knew that there was a credible threat against Donald Trump through Iran on his life and upcoming assassination attempt. Does the Secret Service share that information with local law enforcement, or is it there's something that they're just on their alert and you guys do your thing? Is there solid communication and teamwork there, or is it just one team doing one and the other doing the other?
So most of these have very little warning. So Trump, when he came to our county, it was less than 7 days. I think it was like 6 days warning. And then it was in the last few days that the conversations with the Secret Service really started to heat up, and like what we were going to do, going out, meeting, kind of going through everything. So there's not a ton of time to be able to really plan these things out. That's the first communication challenge that you deal with. The second is we all have different radio systems. So then what we have to do is we got to take a local guy and put him in with the Secret Service guy. So you're inevitably going to have some lag in communication when you have federal radio systems here and our local radio systems. That's another communication piece that we have. And then I think oftentimes the federal government is notorious for holding a little information that we would love for them to share with us. I don't know if they shared that information with local law enforcement. I wasn't there. I like to think that when they were coming to Florence, we vetted out that whether there was any active threats. We had these conversations, whether we should be on the lookout for any particular people or any of that. So those conversations were had, but you're talking about something that's happening in a very quick time frame. And some of these rallies might even have less than a week to prepare for it. So yeah, their communication is probably one of the biggest challenges we face when something like this rolls into town.
And the second part, real quick, Rob, the building that the shooter was on, of course, the silly excuse that it was a sloped roof. We can't have safety concerns there. Should be all over us if we did that. It was just a bunch of silly. But they said we felt it better to secure the building from the inside. Now, because we don't know, we're asking law enforcement, we're asking you, Sheriff. Why would you secure a building? Understand, sweep the building inside, make clear it, and everything's good. Secure the building from the inside. Why would everybody stay on the inside instead of making sure that everybody's on the outside and nobody gets to that building? Am I off on that? But I'm so confused as to why that would be. Why would you secure a building from the inside?
So when I heard what she was saying on that, I tried to put myself in their position. And what I can think is sometimes you will have a contingency of guys that are ready to be able to mobilize somewhere. And so you want to have them in a particular area. So they might be a quick reaction force that's going to be able to go out and deal with a specific problem. And it might be where the comms is happening, between both agencies. They might have some video camera feeds there. So I'd like to believe what she was trying to say is that's where that was happening at. But that doesn't mean that the outside of the building is secure. And I would have thought that would have been one of the primary buildings to secure. There wasn't a ton of buildings around there that they needed to secure. So I think most people, and this is a question that needs to be answered, is why was that building and that rooftop not secured? Because that was one of the potential threat places. I could take one look at the aerial view of it, and I would have been like, you better secure that place.
Yeah.
And somehow that wasn't. So,
yeah. $1 million question. Now, what we're hearing, though, from a lot of people that are in the position that you are running for, Sheriff, Senator, Republicans, saying that the Secret Service director should resign. That's fine. Great. What I'm so tired of, talk, not action.
Yeah.
How do you make sure you're a senator of action? So in a case like this, where can you put the pressure so that there is action rather than just, I got to make my public statement so nobody gets mad at me?
So I think where Congress has the best ability to react because they control purse strings. So if you're not going to run your agency appropriately, then we're not going to pay your salary, whatever. So there's that piece of it that they could use. Senate has a lot of responsibility for proving a lot of these people into these positions, judges, any of these directors. I think that they need to pull them back in. I just find it crazy that this administration can't see that this person needs to be let go. I mean, that's what you need to send a message to the American people that says, because what it says is you're sending a message that says we're completely okay with something that wasn't okay. And that's a bad message to send, not just on a national level. It's a global bad message to send. Because now if I'm like, they didn't even fix the problem. Now I realize that there's a lot of vulnerability here. So on so many levels, I think I'm a sheriff. If I screw something up, granted, they can't come in and fire me. The people have to do it. But if I was a police chief and I screwed something up, I would resign on that level. Why? Because it was a failure on, I'm responsible as the leader of that organization. It was a failure on my watch and it should be handled that. So I think as you can control purse strings with these agencies that are being poorly run, or be it by people that continue to make one bad thing after another and they're still in office. Because that's the only way that you're going to be able to hold the executive branch accountable for the people that they're putting in place. And the other one is making sure that we're not appointing or passing these appointments through without a really good vetting process. For example, that lady was the head of Pepsi. How does that translate over to the Secret Service? I mean, that's a really big jump.
Maybe a lot of the agents drink Pepsi, and maybe there's like soda addicts. I don't know. I'm just trying. We're grasping at straws here.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think those are the ways that you do it, but there has to be some accountability. And when we as citizens, I as a citizen of Arizona and Pinal County, when I elect my congressmen and my senators, I want you to hold these bureaucrats and technocrats' feet to the fire, because that we're paying them healthy salaries to go back and do these jobs. And we can't, we can only control everybody else every 4 years with the vote, but those people we should be able to control with the elected officials we sent back.
Can I just make a kind of a final plea before we let the sheriff tell us where we can help him become a senator and how we can get involved? But listen, I'm going to say this right now. Kari Lake cannot beat that Democrat Slappy in the general election. Can't. It won't happen. Sheriff Mark Lamb will mop the floor with him. We cannot have Ruben Gallego as a senator. This nation cannot handle 2 senators from Arizona that are just rubber stamps for Chuck Schumer. We can't have that. It is not good for this nation. Help this nation recover. Help this nation heal, and place your vote for Sheriff Lamb. I'll say that right now. You got mine. You have the entire list here, pal. So if you could, Sheriff, let us know what we can do to how we can get involved, where we can go, how we can donate, how we can help out.
And you're right. We will take this state back. And if you're a Republican or a Democrat or independent, look, we already have a Democrat senator. Let's balance it out. Let's get some balance to our contingency we're sending back. But not only that, let's send the right experience back to deal with the issues. So if you'd like, please come support me at marklambforsenate.com, sherifflambforsenate.com. If you want to donate some money, please, we'll take any donations. Every yard sign you see, every street sign, those cost a lot of money. Every bit of donation goes towards our campaign and making sure that we can get elected on July 30th. And then I would also love your vote this month and on July 30th. And if you're an independent, you can vote. You can show up to the precinct that you're in and you can ask for a Republican ballot and you can vote in this. And I would love to have your vote as well. But I truly do believe, Mike, I'm right with you. We will win in the general election. We'll get all the Republicans to the table. We'll get a lot of the independents to the table. And I truly believe there's a lot of Democrats that don't like the direction that party is heading right now. And I think they'd be willing to come across to put a common sense, experienced man in there that understands the temperament that is needed in Washington, D.C., and the experience to restore balance and order to that chaos back there. So please come support me and follow me on social media, American Sheriff on Instagram, Sheriff Lamb on Facebook, and Sheriff Lamb 1 at Twitter.
One more thing before you go, Sheriff.
Yeah.
And that applies to you because Rhonda said in the chat that she's an independent. So it's good to know that on election day, she can go to her precinct, request a Republican ballot, fill in that circle for Sheriff Lamb. But Sheriff, is there a story that motivates you to keep going, to understand the American promise? I imagine you have many, especially in the sheriff capacity. But what is that motivating factor for you that America's on a shaky ground right now and we need some stability and leadership?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because I do have a story for you. First of all, what drives us personally, my wife and I, my family, is the loss of our children, and while that seems weird for some people, that gave us a deep purpose that would not, you're not going to knock me off. You're not going to be able to get me to accept anything to get out of this race. I am laser focused on running this race because we felt something to the core when we lost our children. And we realized there is no guarantee for tomorrow. And the only thing we take with us in this life is what we do. But the story that I love encapsulates the American spirit. And I think stories like this are what built America. And we often forget the sacrifice of lives and fortunes and honor that gave us the freedoms that we're so frivolously handling right now. But it's the story of General Mad Anthony Wayne. And you're going to see some parallels in this story with what happened to President Trump as well, I think. But General Mad Anthony Wayne was one of General Washington's most experienced generals. That matters. And he said to him, look, the war, you guys don't have a lot of troops. And the war, they've been losing battle after battle. And they had lost this fort called Stony Point. And the English had taken it. They'd come up the Hudson River, overtook it. And they had tried to succor the Americans to come out to battle. But finally, George Washington doesn't take the bait. And he comes to General Mad Anthony Wayne. And he says, hey, I know you're outnumbered, but do you think you can take back Stony Point? He said, sir, you issue the order and I'll storm hell. So they decide to put a plan together. They decide they're going to attack at night. And why this matters is 2 days ago, July 16th, 1779, 245 years ago, at the stroke of midnight, with bayonets fixed on their weapons, 1,200 hand-picked, experienced soldiers They didn't send anybody back. They sent the best, most experienced handpicked. 1,200 soldiers put their bayonets on, no balls in their guns, because if they were to trip, they might have set off their rifle and alert the English they were coming. But when midnight hit, they went to attacking. And they were mostly hand-to-hand combat with bayonets. But at one point, the balls did start to fly. And General Mad Anthony Wayne, boom, gets struck in the head and goes down. You can imagine his guys probably pounced on him, much like what you saw with President Trump the other day. But like President Trump, which was when I saw him get up and pump his fist, that gave me such a tremendous feeling of American pride and spirit. But General Mad Anthony Wayne got up and did the same thing. And he said, "March on, boys, carry me into that fort." And they went into that fort and ended up taking it, capturing 472 English. They wounded 74 English and killed 20 English, only losing 15 Americans that night. But what was important was the letter that he wrote to General George Washington at 2 a.m. in the morning on July 16th. And he only wrote 2 lines. He said, "General Washington, the fort and garrison with Colonel Johnston are ours. Our officers and our men behave like men who are determined to be free." So my question is to everybody listening, will we behave like men and women determined to be free, or will we continue to stand by as we lose the freedoms and everything that those men sacrificed their lives and their fortune, their honor to give us? My wife and I are determined to be free. So the story that drives us is that determination to be free that it was exhibited by those patriots of old. And so my last thing that I'll ask you guys, everybody out there, is, sirs, madams, you issue the order. I'll storm hell back in Washington, D.C. for you, and we'll take this country back.
And we wrap it there. Sheriff Mark Lamb, thank you so much. We wish you the best luck. We are here to help in any way, and we're proud to have you. We're proud to have you as the nation will soon be introduced to you. We're proud to say that he's our guy. That's our guy. We knew him when. That's right. We knew him when. Thank you. Best of luck to you, Sheriff. Thank all
guys.
of you.
I appreciate you guys, and thank you for all the kind things you say about my troops on the ground here. They're great men and women. I get to take credit for the great work they do, but they are great men and women. And so thank you guys for having me on today. God bless you both. And thanks for the vote.
And thank you all for playing along today. Share this out, get the word out, help us along, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on Russell and Hunter at noon. We'll see you there.